Hello and welcome to the Vault of Truth YouTube channel. This is update 1 in the IPG2 series. Due to recent events in the world, we've gotten 5 additional event fulfillments for a grand total of 45 now in the 7.5 minute animation. So let's jump in now and take a look. The first one we get is event fulfillment number 41, the Tip of the Spear event from the Strait of Hormuz on February 28, 2026. Remember, the phrase the tip of the spear is a military phrase that means the first attack of the grand or total operation. In order for this event to be fulfilled, we were looking for an initial attack from the US or Israel from this general area around the Strait of Hormuz, and that's exactly what we got. We also got event fulfillment number 42, which is a naval vessel firing a missile towards Iran in the direction you see indicated there with the arrow, represented by that fish head that's also kind of in the shape of a missile being launched. Here's an article showing both airstrikes and missiles being launched from naval vessels. Here is proof that the attacks really came from the Strait of Hormuz region. You can see on this map the position of all the U.S. naval forces, with the Lincoln aircraft carrier, 8 destroyers, and 3 combat ships. Also take note of the orange line there, and the direction it is pointing. Because like I said in my previous video on IPG2, both that orange line and the fish head in the previous scene that we were looking at points straight to the Bushehr nuclear plant. Now let's switch tracks for a second and jump to this scene where we get the February 17, 2026 eclipse that occurred in Antarctica. This scene happens exactly at the 2-minute and 17-second mark. We see the Blackbird missiles in the bottom left, and we also get event fulfillment number 43, which is Ali Khamenei being killed by U.S. forces. And they show that here because this also represents bin Laden. So he represents both people at the same time. And of course, bin Laden was killed by U.S. forces. We also see the CIA badge shown there, indicating that both Khamenei and bin Laden were just controlled puppets of the Illuminati elites. So in this video, not only am I showing you the 5 additional events that have been fulfilled, but I also want to look at a few of the potential events that could be coming shortly down the road, such as this one here. In the previous Pet Goat video, we saw how this scene shows event fulfillment 18 and 19 with Hurricane Harvey and the shutdown of the Colonial Oil Pipeline. And we also saw the bunny head there in the clouds representing Trump overlooking all of these events, meaning that they would happen under one of his 2 terms. And of course, event 18 and 19 fulfill that. But this scene also appears to show an additional event. If you look at the piece of land there that's shaped like an oil pipeline that's pointing down towards the water, it could also represent that peninsula that we saw earlier at the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, when you watch this scene, oil is slowly dripping off the very tip of that peninsula there. And this could be indicating either the Strait of Hormuz being closed or the oil ships being blocked due to warfare raging in this area. Or both. I believe this will happen very soon. And here's an article that supports that theory. How U.S.-Israel attacks on Iran threaten the Strait of Hormuz oil markets. About 20 to 30% of global oil and gas supplies are shipped through the Strait of Hormuz. I pulled this scene to analyze because not only does this guy represent Dr. Fauci, but he also represents Abraham Lincoln, with his chin there kind of being pointed with a beard like Lincoln. And of course, it's U.S. currency as well. And you can see 5 written on the bottom right of his chin, representing the $5 bill, which of course has President Lincoln. This is the next scene that I pulled for us to look at. And if you remember, this is the point in the video where they show the kid Ludovic completely connected to the AIB system to the point to where he is able to see internet data directly in his eyesight. But of course, that's an event that will occur much further down the road. The part of this scene that concerned me is where it says in his eyes, war coverage markets plunge. We've already seen many economists predicting a major Great Depression level collapse of the U.S. economy. And there are many factors contributing to this. You have the U.S. national debt at $38 trillion, with countries like China owning a substantial portion of that. And that is the only thing, and I want to make this very clear for people, that is the only thing that is keeping the dollar from completely collapsing to the point where each dollar is only worth a penny. Otherwise, they will have to do quantitative easing and inflate the debt away, but then you will have hyperinflation and currency collapse. The next factor contributing to U.S. economic collapse is the overhyped AI bubble, with AI investments and speculation being the only thing that's keeping the stock market artificially high. Many economists and experts are saying when that bubble bursts, you will have a Great Depression level collapse. You have American consumer debt at all-time highs, cost of living at all-time highs, and the value of the U.S. dollar even before hyperinflation is at an all-time low. So all it could take is World War III being ignited from this Middle East war to cause a fragile U.S. economy that's already hanging by a thread to completely crash. And so we could see this event shortly down the road, especially if countries like China start dumping all of their U.S. debt that they hold in the form of U.S. bond investments. Here's another scene, and if you remember, this one gave us our event fulfillment number 27, where the U.S. bombed 3 Iranian nuclear enrichment facilities in June of 2025, using B-2 bombers. However, like many other parts in IPG2, this scene has multiple layers. So it's also showing the recent event where B-2 bombers struck targets in Iran on February 28, 2026, which gives us our event fulfillment number 44. Here's a recent news article proving that B-2 bombers are being used to strike various targets across Iran. Now, if you remember early on in this video, we saw how there is a possible attack coming from the Strait of Hormuz area towards the Bushehr nuclear plant. And it's highly possible that's what's being shown here, with 5 missiles being launched off of the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, which they depict with Abraham Lincoln's head laying down on top of that pedestal. And then it shows that those missiles are heading for the Bushehr nuclear plant due to the fact that it's sitting right on top of Abraham Lincoln's head. Now, I showed this in the previous IPG2 video, but I figured I'd show it again. This is the Bushehr nuclear power plant, just to again confirm that that is what they are showing on top of Abraham Lincoln's head in that scene. And again, I'm showing this because I believe this is an event that could come shortly down the road. Now we're going to look at this scene, and we see blackbirds taking flight, which is of course representing missiles being launched. And of course, we've seen in the news, Iran has launched a massive retaliation across the Middle East, firing hundreds of missiles into various countries and striking U.S. military bases. And that gives us our event fulfillment number 45. Also remember, these scenes have multiple layers to them. So this is not only showing the initial retaliation from Iran due to the initial strikes from the U.S. and Israel, but we are also looking down at the Bushehr nuclear plant, seeing a strike that has been done upon it. You can see it's damaged there. And so this could also be showing a future retaliation from Iran after this target is hit. Okay, now as we proceed into this scene, we get a little bit of a question mark. This of course represents moths to the flame, which is an analogy that represents acting based on compulsion, not reason, acting over impulse or emotion instead of using proper judgment. And it's something that we could apply to either the United States or Iran, or possibly even Israel. Because really all 3 parties have behaved in this conflict that kind of seems based on emotion or compulsion rather than calculated reasoning. And yes, I realize that, if you've been watching my channel, we know that all of this is a scripted event. However, the producers of this video want to present it as if it is a real interaction between real interested parties or nations, because that's the narrative that the common masses get. But I'm hesitant to call this an event fulfillment at this moment in time for either Israel, the U.S., or Iran, because I believe there could be a greater escalation coming from additional nations like Russia and China that could become a more extreme fulfillment of this. And so for now, I'm keeping it on hold. But one thing's for certain, if it hasn't already happened, it will happen shortly down the road. I am pretty sure about that. Of course, I had to pull in this scene that shows Pieta in the February 17th, 2026 eclipse. We also see the Super Bowl trophy made up of the woman's head and her arm, likely pointing to this recent Super Bowl we just had. And then, of course, in the background, we see the sunken USS Abraham Lincoln. You can even see in the place that I circled there that they are showing Abraham Lincoln's head laying down, facing upward. You can clearly see the nose and the mouth and the beard pointing up. Then further in the background, we see more sunken U.S. naval ships. That other aircraft carrier could be the USS Ford. Then we see a third sunken ship. It could be one of the several destroyers or battleships that have been sent over there. My guess is this event will happen after the Bushehr nuclear plant is hit. And all of these events could be just days away or maybe a couple of weeks. So again, I think we're going to see all of this pretty soon. Now, I pulled this scene in to look at just because, this is Shiva, the goddess of destruction, doing her destruction dance as the chaos in the world increases. But you really can't apply this to any specific date or point in time because really the world has been getting worse and worse for a long time, many, many, many years. Yes, things seem to be accelerating more and more now, but you still can't really apply a single date or point in time to this. But I still like to show it because with this new war in the Middle East, we see the chaos continuing to increase. I do want to point out the fact that her head is sitting in front of the fire in direct alignment there represents an eclipse, with her head being the moon and the fire being the sun. Because again, the whole grand theme that ties all of the sub-themes together in IPG2 is the sun speaking through eclipses, showing prophesied events around key eclipse dates. This is the next scene in the sequence that I believed was relevant to current world events. We've already looked at how this represents AI wiping out white-collar jobs, and how it represents a possible future event of a nuke going off in Manhattan, with this scene representing Wall Street, which would of course lead to financial collapse. Now, I admit this event is probably a little further down the road. However, I didn't want to rule it out because we are now seeing news coming from the United States warning of terrorist cells inside of the United States conducting terrorist attacks. We have also seen Russia and China condemning the U.S. for attacking Iran, and Venezuela for that matter. So a false flag event like this, which is what it would be, is very possible. It could be closer than we think. And then finally, I couldn't ignore this scene. You have the Russian bear dancer there with a NATO symbol on his chest. And in the previous video, we talked about how this represents the Ukraine war becoming a proxy war for Russia versus NATO. But I can't help but wonder if this has a second layer of meaning to it, where it represents Russia getting directly involved in the Iran war. After all, we can see in recent news, including this article, that Russia has condemned the operation and called it armed aggression, and have demanded an immediate halt. We've also seen China showing deep concern, which you see here in this article as well. So I think very soon we're going to see a lot of additional events being fulfilled from the IPG2 video. And not only are we going to see additional events being fulfilled, but these events are going to become more and more severe and apocalyptic, because now we're getting into some of the more major, very serious things that were shown in IPG2. It's very possible that even by the end of this year, the U.S. and many regions of the world will be in rough shape, with things only getting exponentially worse every year after that. So again, time is clearly running out. If you have not been saved, please do so today. I have a video on this channel that explains exactly how to do that. If you were once a Christian but have backslidden, then today is a good day to recommit yourself to Christ. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.